One of the reasons I'm such a skeptic and opponent of the theory of evolution is the history of.
Guess who got 10-minute video privileges? Me. Probably not going to use 10 minutes, but this video is talking about how Ernst Haeckel's, I think I pronounced that right, embryology and ontology theory is wrong. So, just to state, Haeckel was a racist old shit and a eugenicist, so this is in no way defending him at all because he was a piece of shit. But this is kind of elaborating on embryology and ontology. So Haeckel came up with the very first kind of embryonic development diagrams, and no, they were not accurate. They didn't really have access to, like, good quality microscopes. They kind of had to guess on a lot of things. And the images and diagrams that Haeckel came up with and were used for a long time are not accurate because they did not have access to the good technology to be able to see super accurately the stages. Embryology is an actual thing. It's an actual area of study, and it is pretty accurate. So all vertebrates, so animals with a vertebral column and backbone, do go through very similar. Ooh, there's a bee. Go through very similar stages in embryo development. All vertebrates are what are known as deuterostomes, which means during embryonic and cellular development, the anus develops before the mouth. This is common to all vertebrates and a couple other things, but pretty much largely vertebrates. This is opposed to most invertebrates, like arthropods and mollusks, where they're protostomes, which means the mouth develops before the anus. These synapomorphies that are common through all vertebrates include a notochord, a postanal tail, and a couple other things. Since in the grand scheme of things, all vertebrates are relatively similar, at least in development and physiology, embryonic development has pretty similar stages that tend to diverge mostly in the later stages of embryo development. So these are actual images of an actual human embryo, probably a fetus that got terminated, had the pregnancy was terminated throughout the body or something, doing something, but these are actual images of human embryos. You can see through the different stages of development, it doesn't really start looking like anything close to human until the number 22 image. If we go next to, this is a fetal pig that is also a real image, not a drawing or a computer-generated image or anything. Again, you can't really tell that it's a pig until it gets to about the second to last or second or third to last image here. This particular diagram does not have a lot of pictures of the super early development like the human one does, but if you compare the first couple images here, they do look similar to a lot of to a couple of the stages in the human development one. Here, if we go now to an image of a chicken development, again, the first two look very similar to the human and the pig, and then in the third one, after it skipped a couple steps, this is not a complete diagram of chicken embryo development, it does look very similar to the human and the pig. Finally, we've got, this is a shark embryo. It does look quite different, earlier on, because sharks are a lot less closely related to humans and pigs than they are to, other stuff, because humans and sharks aren't very related, so they do start diverging earlier, but again, the early stages, it doesn't look like a shark, it doesn't look like a human, it just looks like a blob. So there is a reason that morphology is not common, is less heavily relied upon, is because it's not super reliable, and in determining relatedness and stuff, molecular and genetic data is more useful because it's more accurate instead of, well, this looks like this. But in the very early stages of development, most vertebrate fetuses tend to look very similar because that's basically just the best way of doing things. They develop like that because this is a good way to develop. Physiologically and anatomically, they've all got pretty much the same stuff. There's like head, mouth, but anus, digestive tract, respiratory tract, even though that's different in a lot of things. Like, it's very different in sharks than it is to humans. But yeah, there's a lot of similarities. You have to develop the same amount of stuff, like the same things, just different configurations, I guess. Separate development does tend to go in the same steps and just tends to diverge mostly in the later stages. So, was Henkel a good person? No. Was his diagrams fully accurate? No. And especially since he didn't have access to molecular or genetic data. But they also weren't completely a fraud, because if you look at actual pictures of stages of embryos, like those were real embryos, they're like, while not as totally similar as Henkel thought, they're not completely different either. He was also wrong in his theory, though, that as an embryo develops, it goes through the different stages of evolution. So, like fish to reptile to a bird to human. That's not how it works. It just, they all look vaguely similar, because like one of the synapomorphies is a post-anal tail, which humans and other mammals tend to lose sometimes. Well, actually, mainly just humans tend to lose the post-anal tail. But it's not going through different stages of evolution. This is just different stages of embryonic development that is common to most vertebrates. So I'm not saying I condone Henkel and his ideas because eugenics is bad. I'm just saying they weren't like complete 100% fraud. The creator of the original video also, this is a picture of one of the very first phylogenetic trees made by Henkel, which, okay, it's not accurate at all, but he says at the bottom there's these creatures that Henkel just made up, and that is also false, because there's, right, if you look at the bottom, it says there's an amoeba, which is a real thing, and at the very bottom is, my goodness, is Monera, which is just a less commonly used term for the kingdom bacteria. So Monera and bacteria are the same thing. So I didn't look at all of the stuff on the tree. I didn't Google everything, but he did not make up this entire, like, these creatures at the bottom, which aren't even creatures. They're prokaryote organisms. But that's just, I had to mention that, because he didn't make, it's not an accurate tree in the slightest. Like, he puts man, humans at the very top, which is inaccurate, and bacteria at the very bottom, which is inaccurate. But he didn't just make up amoebas and Monera. There's a real things. So, yeah, that's how evolution and embryology works.